All right. Hi, everybody. On the other side. So we're going to realize emptiness today, okay? So
Yep.
prepare yourselves. Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes can happen. You know, never know. But yeah, otherwise we put enough imprints in the mind that one day for sure in the future it will happen, right? So yeah, that's a given. That's a guarantee. You know, it's just a matter of time. And you have to be patient and work a bit hard, and then it will, it will happen one day. So welcome on this last session. So why do we need to realize emptiness in order to liberate all sentient beings? Only compassion and bodhicitta is not enough. Without emptiness, you won't even be able to be free from samsara, even if you have compassion or bodhicitta, right? So you need the realization of emptiness to stop all suffering for self and others. So that's why we're here. So think about all suffering sentient beings surrounding yourself in human aspects, although undergoing individual sufferings, and focus on when their sufferings think. Their sufferings is caused by karma and afflictions, and which is root cause is ignorance, and that has to be eliminated. So really to be of help for beings, I have to understand and realize emptiness. Yeah? And taking this into account, this motivation, we also think for that purpose, I'm going to recite prayers. For that purpose, I'm going to lead all the sentient beings in the prayers. And in front of yourself, Sakyamuni Buddha, surrounded by the masters of India, masters of Tibet, and other Buddhist traditions. And then in front of the assembly, you lead all the sentient beings in the prayer. Yeah.
Yep. Let me just.
And yeah. So while you recite the prayer, also think about the meaning of the words of first of the three jewels of refuge, as in the first praise of the Buddha, and then contemplating emptiness in Heart Sutra, and we say no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind. Think that no I, meaning doesn't exist from its own side, right? So every point you mention there, if you just a little bit reflect upon that nothing exists from its own side, then puts imprints in the mind, right? And then we recite the complete overview of the Lamrim with the foundation of all good qualities. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, with the correct intention, recite the prayer. To the founder, the transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the four destroyer, the complete, perfect, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sagata know of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you the complete and fully awakened, the transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subdue from the Sakya clan, I prostrate me, go for refuge. To the founder, the transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the full destroyer, the complete, perfect, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sagata know of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you the complete and fully awakened one, the transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subdue from the Sakya clan, I prostrate me, go for refuge. To the founder, the transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the full destroyer, the complete, perfect, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sagata know of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you the complete and fully awakened one, and then destroy the glorious conqueror, the subdue from the Sakya clan, I prostrate me, go for reference. When I was supreme amongst humans, you were born on this earth, and you played out the 7 strides, hence I am supreme in this world. To you, O wise, then I prostrate, with pure bodies formed supremely pure, wisdom ocean, like a golden mountain. Fame that blazes in the 3 worlds, winner of the best, Lord, to your prostrate. With supreme signs, face like a spotless moon, body like gold, to your prostrate. Thus free, like you, the 3 worlds are not, incomparable wise one, to your prostrate. The saving having great compassion, the founding having all understanding. A field of merits, we call it like a vast ocean. To you, the one can't dustness, I prostrate. The purity that frees from attachment, the virtue that frees from the lower rounds, the one part, sublime pure reality, the Dharma that pacifies, I prostrate. Those who are liberated to show the path to liberation, the holy field qualified for realizations, who are devoted to the moral precepts. To you, the sublime community standing virtue, I prostrate. Homage to the Supreme Buddha, homage to the Dharma refuge, homage to the great Sangha. To all 3 have a devout homage. To all worldly of respects, bounded bodies, as many in all realms and all respect. The supreme fate, I pay homage. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only perfect virtuous actions. Subdue your mind thoroughly. This is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a vibration, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a top or door or bubble, a dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud, sea conditions, and such. To these merits may all sentient beings attain the rank of all seeing, subdue the full faults, and be delivered from samsara ocean, perturbed by the waves, aging, sickness, and death. I prostrate to the Arya Triple Gem. Thus I heard at one time, the Bhagwan was dwelling on the vast virtuous mountain in Rajkir, to the great monks and community of Bodhisattvas. At that time, the Bhagwan was absorbed in the concentration, catalyst phenomenon found perfection. Also at that time, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avilisvara looked upon the very practice of the and beheld those 5 aggregates also as empty and nature. Then, to the power of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avilisvara how she had a son, lineage, or trainer who wishes to practice activities of perfection of wisdom. He said that, and the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avilisvara said this to the Venerable Shariputra. Shariputra is son of the lineage or daughter of the lineage who wishes to practice activities in profound perfection of wisdom. Should look upon it like this, correctly and repeating, beholding those 5 aggregates also as empty in nature. Form is empty, emptiness is form, emptiness is not other than form, and form is also not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, composition of factors, empty. Shariputra, likewise, all phenomena, emptiness, without characteristics. Unproduced, unceased, stainless, without stain, not fulfilled. Shariputra, therefore, in emptiness is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no composition of factors, no consciousness. No eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no visible form, no sound, no odor, no taste, no object of touch, and no phenomenon. There is no element and upson, and including no mind element and mention conscious element. There is no ignorance, no extinction of ignorance, and so on, and up to including an aging and death, and no extinction of aging and death. Similarly, there is no suffering, origination, cessation, and part. No exalted wisdom, no attainment, and also non-attainment. Shariputra, therefore, because there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely and dwell in perfection of wisdom. The mind without obscuration and without fear. Having completely passed beyond error, they reach the end point of nirvana. All the Buddhas who dwell in the 3 times also manifest complete awakening to the surprise, perfect, complete life, and relies on the perfection of wisdom. Therefore, the mantra, perfection of wisdom, the mantra to really pacify all suffering should be known as the truth, since it's not false. The mantra of perfect wisdom is declared, Tayata, Gatagata, Paragata, Parasamgata, Bodhisattva. Shariputra, Bodhisattva Mahasattva should train in profound perfection of wisdom like that. Then the Bhagwan rose from that concentration and commended to the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avilisvara, saying, well said, son of the lineage, it's like that, it's like that. This you should practice a profound perfection of wisdom, just as we indicated in Tathagata's result. The Bhagwan having thus spoken, and Venerable Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avilisvara, those surrounding it entirely, along with the words of gods, humans, the Suras, Gandhas, were overjoyed and highly praised, spoken by the Bhagwan. I prostrate to the gathering of the kinis of the 3 chakras, who abide of the holy yoga views in space, by your powers of clairvoyance and magic eliminations. Look, petition by the mother for a child. Akasamarasasana samari. Akasamarasasana. Akasamarasasana samasamaraya pe tayata gata gata parasamgata bodhisattva. By the teachings of the 3 sublime jewels of truth, may inner and outer entrance be transformed, may they be dispelled, and may they be pacified in the bodhisattva. May all negative forces opposed to the Dharma be completely pacified, and may the host of 80,000 obstacles be pacified. And may we be separated from problems and harmful conditions to the Dharma, and may all enjoyments be in accordance with the Dharma, and may there be auspiciousness and perfect happiness here and right now. The foundation of all good qualities is the kind and perfect pure Guru. Correctly devoting to him is the root of the path. By clearly seeing this and applying great effort, please bless me to rely upon with great respect. Understanding that the precious freedom of this rebirth is found only once and is greatly meaningful, difficult to find again. Please bless me to generate a mind that unceasing day and night takes its essence. This life is impermanent as a water bubble. Remember how quickly it decays and that comes. After that, just like the shadow follows the body, the roots of black and white karma follow. Finding firm and definite conviction in this, please bless me always to be careful, to abandon even the slightest negativities and accomplish all virtuous deeds. Seeking samsaric pleasures, they are uncertain, can be relied upon. Recognize these shortcomings, please bless me to generate a strong wish for the bliss of liberation. Led by this pure thought, mindfulness, alertness, and great caution arise. The root of the teachings is keeping the promotion of vows. Please bless me to accomplish this essential practice. Just as I have fallen into the sea of samsara, so have all modern migratory beings. Please bless me to see this and train the Supreme Bodhicitta and bear the responsibility of free migratory beings. Even if I develop only bodhicitta, but do not practice the 3 types of morality, I will not achieve enlightenment. With my clear recognition of this, please bless me to practice the Bodhisattva vow with great energy. Once I pacify distraction to wrong objects and correctly analyze the meaning of reality, please bless me to generate quickly within my mind stream the unified part of calm abiding and special insight. Having become a pure vessel by training in the general part, please bless me to enter the holy gateway of the fortunate ones, the supreme Vajra vehicle. At that time, the basis of accomplishing the 2 attainments is keeping pure vows and samadhi. As I become firmly convinced of this, please bless me to protect these vows and pledges like my life. Then, having realized the importance of the 2 stages, the essence of the Vajrayana, exerting with great energy, never giving up before sessions, please bless me to realize the teachings of the Holy Guru. Like that, may the Gurus who show the noble paths, the spiritual friends who practice it their own lives. Please bless me to pacify completely without any hindrances. In all my lives, never separate from perfect Gurus. May I enjoy the magnificent Dharma by completing the qualities of stages and paths. May I quickly attain the state of Vajradhana. Janjo Bada Dani Gazuji Daki Jeju Give Sona Yola Penche Sangye Sangye Judan Suni Sonamba Janjo Bada Dani Gazuji Daki Jinzo Give Sona Ki Dola Penche Sangye Dova Shu Sangye Judan Suni Sona Janjo Bada Dani Gazuji Daki Jinzo Give Sona Yola Penche Sangye Dova Shu Yeah, so we just read in the Foundation of All Good Qualities, once I've pacified distraction to wrong objects and correctly analyzed the meaning of reality, please bless me to generate quickly with my mind stream the unified part of calm abiding and special insight. Right? So that's where we are in the Lamrim. First, we see the importance of depending on the teacher and practice how to depend on through thought and action. And then we contemplate the precious human rebirth, right? That's an incredible opportunity we have, extremely fortunate. This is so difficult to find. In the lines of experience of Lamrim, by Lama Tsongkhapa, it says like lightning, you know. That means the time we have as a human being, having all the freedoms and endowment, is like that, you know. It's very short, and it's very easy to die, and yeah, the time of death is uncertain, and this opportunity is there. So if we use it or not is up to us. You know? So that's the teaching on the precious human rebirth and death and impermanence. And then we see that after we die, then what happens? Then you can go to lower states of existence, higher states of existence. So if you go to lower states of existence, there's a lot of suffering in the animal realm, for example. So you contemplate the suffering of animals, and then you try and other beings in lower realms, and then you generate a wish not to be born in those states, right? And based on that, you take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and Sangha. And then the main refuge is the Dharma, or the actual refuge, so to say, is the Dharma, right? So then the Dharma means that the Buddha said, okay, if you don't like to be born in the low stage of existence, then you have to practice, in accordance with the law of cause and effect. That means prevent creation of negative deeds and practice virtue. Yeah, the courses for a presumed rebirth. Prevent yourself from falling into low stages of existence. So then you do that, and then you create the right courses. Yeah, so then you practice karma, what we said. Yeah, and then after seeing that even though you have achieved or obtained a precious human rebirth in future lifetimes, then still it's not perfect, because still as humans we have the suffering of birth, sickness, aging, death, and then all the mental sufferings that comes along with it. So even higher states of rebirth are not perfect, right? And contemplating those points, especially the suffering of samsara in general, and the individual sufferings, and the three types of suffering of change, that when we have the suffering of suffering, very easy to recognize. The suffering of change is a bit more difficult, but still we can realize that things change into suffering. Even if whatever you'd like to enjoy in life, it's not completely giving you full satisfaction, right? So yeah, so that's everything in samsara, every happiness in samsara is to a certain extent contaminated, or has afflictions. There's no ultimate happiness to be found. People are happy a little bit, and then they want to have more. There's no kind of, oh, now that's enough. That never happens, right? So there's no satisfaction, you see. So that means everything that has to do with the sensory perception and afflictions, there's no end to suffering, and there's no real happiness to be found. Of course, we can enjoy a walk or a nice meal or a nice chat with somebody. It's fine. But still, that is not really giving us ultimate happiness or give causes to liberation, right? So then you contemplate that, and then you practice morality based on the wish for liberation or renunciation. And then you contemplate emptiness. And then you will be able eventually to get liberated from samsara. Yeah, because the root cause of all suffering is this ignorance of, focus upon the aggregates, and then apprehension or of I and mine that is apprehended in an inherently way. That we think I exist from my own side. I exist inherently. But that's, as David Bohm says, is just a show, but a very convincing show, and it feels very comfortable to follow that show. That's what most people do, as David Bohm says. He's a kind of, physicist, so out of his research of quantum theory and relativity theory, to combine those two together, he came to this conclusion in this movie, Infinite Potential. I may have mentioned before. I find very interesting. The most interesting part of the movie, actually, there's many interesting points, but when he walks behind the tree towards the end of the movie, he talks about this. The self is just a show, but a very convincing one. Yeah. So that means that this I appears, and we think that's reality. That's the problem, you see? So because of thinking it's reality, then I is being considered as inherently, then mine also is being considered inherently. All your possessions, right? My body, my mind. Then it goes a little bit more out. My computer, my house, my car, my telephone, my smartphone, my iPhone. So all the things in daily life, or my time, and somebody wasted your time. It's like, my time, how dare this person to waste my time? Or a little bit too late in traffic or public transport, and also my time. You cannot, if you're too late in public transport, you cannot do anything about it, right? But still people think, oh, this stupid company, this great Indian, not Indian, great Western railways is always great, many of them. Not all of them in the UK, but quite a few, So I was just, when I went to the train, I traveled a few times on a Sunday, but yeah, that's not the right time to travel, they say in the UK, because then the trains run late sometimes. So that means that you're late and then you waste time. So then people think, my time, and then people get upset. But you cannot do anything about it, and becoming upset is make it even worse. So it's actually very stupid what we do at that time to make it worse than it already is. Or you go in the train and then you have the ticket for one coach, but that coach is not there. Even in England it happened, happened to me. Once here, I didn't travel that much on a train in the UK, but it happened. I had a ticket coach D, and there was no coach D. It was two B's, but no D. So then I was sitting in one of the B's with somebody else, and he had the same problem. We had great fun because he was also quite a relaxed personality, so we had great fun. But some people, they didn't have that much fun. It was quite cold at that time. Was it November? Anyway, so yeah, that means that when you have a concrete concept of I, then we get a concrete concept of mine. And all the things around us we start to see as very concrete. So that's why Nagarjuna says in Ratnavali that by focusing upon or seeing the I as inherently, then also mine is being seen inherently. And based on that we generate afflictions, and based on that we create karma, and based on that we create causes for suffering. So that means everything is originated in this ignorance. So Ratnavali is also a very interesting text. Yeah, very practical, with a lot of things about emptiness as well. Yeah, so the text we're following now is a very condensed praise to the Buddha with regard to emptiness. So Nagarjuna composed quite a few of those praises. There's also a Chöying praise to the Dharmadhatu. It's a very inspiring praise. And there's another praise to the Vajra mind. So it's kind of Mahamudra instruction. Very, very interesting material, So these short texts by Nagarjuna, they're not that easy to grasp the meaning straight away, but very profound, So that's, yeah. Just being able to have a contact with a text like that is very precious. So yeah, I actually didn't explain my quotation because normally you do that. So I said, once I've classified distraction to wrong objects, correctly analyze the meaning of reality. Allez, that's why, because I went to Lamrim, remember? Yeah. Yeah, I did also another talk just finished, so my mind is still in the other talk. Yeah. But so what we just talked about is the kasa. Suffering of samsara, right? Yeah, so there we are. Then I was completely diverted by the power of the trains. Yeah, so we talked about that the I very concrete appears, and based on that we grasp that things are I am mine, right? There we left, then we went in the other direction. So that means that this ignorance has to be recognized, and if you wish to be free of suffering of samsara, which is motivated by the mind of renunciation, then you have to realize emptiness, and that becomes a cause for liberation. Yeah. So, and then next in the Lamarim is that you contemplate bodhicitta. That's why it says, "Just so I fall into the sea of samsara, so for all modern migratory beings, please bless me to train in supreme bodhicitta." So then you train in this attitude of want to become a Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings, right? And then based on bodhicitta, you also practice morality. Same with renunciation, you practice morality. Yeah, that's what it says. If you do not practice the three types of morality, you will not achieve enlightenment. So the three types of morality, probably most of you still already know. So there's a morality of not engaging in non-virtue, right? The morality of engaging in virtue, and morality of working for the benefit of sentient beings. So means abandoning harming sentient beings by the first one, If you don't engage in non-virtue, you don't harm others, right? So that's the first morality training. Yeah? The morality of abandoning non-virtue, right? Then the second one, if you not only do that, but then on top of that you also practice virtue, then you go even more a step further ahead. Yeah? So that's why you say the practice of morality of virtue. And then because it's a morality of the bodhisattva, so that's why the third type of morality is working for the benefit of beings, right? So there can be many faults, you know, by teaching or by helping out people who need help, you know, or people are poor, you help out in a material way. You know, there's many forms you can help out and benefit beings. Yeah? Or just to talk. Somebody who likes to talk or has a problem, then we talk with the person with a good motivation, and that with the right motivation, just talking with a person who, you know, who likes to talk about problem or whatever, then with the correct motivation becomes a cause for enlightenment, right? So everything we do in daily life in that way can become a cause for enlightenment, yeah, if you just motivate yourself correctly. Yeah. So then you have generated bodhicitta, but that by itself is not enough, right? Because we see without removing ignorance, you will not be able to achieve enlightenment. So that's why you see, once I've pacified distraction to wrong objects, that means that pacify distractions. You know, if we try to meditate, then our mind wanders off in the past or the future, right? So that we have to cut off, and we cut it off by the two mental factors, alertness and mindfulness, right? As we normally do with the counting of the breath meditation, yeah? The concentration meditation. So the stronger your concentration becomes, the more powerful the meditation on emptiness becomes as well, you know, right? If you just try to meditate on emptiness and your mind is somewhere else on the planet, then it doesn't become very powerful, right? Same if you read a book, but your mind is somewhere else, then it's, oh, what did I read again? And you have to start over again, you see? So you need a certain amount of concentration, yeah? And for emptiness, even more the case. So that's why it says, one, I've pacified distraction to wrong objects. Wrong objects means, you know, objects from distraction is mostly objects of desire, the past, the future. Yeah? And the mind goes outward, or aversion, you know, sometimes also comes up, and we get irritated with a person, right? So aversion and attachment, you know, disturbs the mind and takes the mind outwards, right? And concentration, we have to keep the mind inwards, you see? So those two causes kind of distraction. Another obstacle of meditation is mental dullness, right? Or laxity. Yeah? So that's sometimes we refer to with ignorance. Mm-hmm. The mind is a bit kind of dullish, sleepish state, no clarity. When you wake up and you didn't get enough sleep, then although you wash your face, the mind is still not moving in a particular direction until you drink a very strong cup of coffee. You see that? So that's laxity, a very coarse form of laxity or mental dullness. But if we meditate, sometimes it becomes a little bit more subtle. You know, the clarity and the sharpness and the stableness of the mind is not present. You know, so that's has to be avoided. Yeah. So that means wrong objects. Yeah. And correctly analyze the meaning of reality. So that means by the power of study, contemplation, and meditation, right? We know we first have to get the meaning, then we have to discuss it, then we have to contemplate or analyze if that's really true, what Namdak is saying about emptiness or not. Does the I really appear like that or not? We have to examine, right? If it's just listening and think, oh yeah, it makes sense, and then you put it aside, then it stays aside. So you close your book, and with closing your book, you close your understanding of it. You know, so that means whatever we talk about or whatever we discuss, you should analyze, right? You should analyze, contemplate. You know, so by analyzing and contemplating those aspects, then your understanding of emptiness becomes more and more profound, right? Then it says, please bless me to generate quickly with mind stream the unified part of calm abiding and special insight. So initially when we meditate, concentration meditation, or sometimes we call it placement meditation, or some people translate it as focused meditation, right? When you count the breath. If you concentrate on an object and you start analyzing, you get a little bit distracted because of the analytical approach in an analytical meditation, right? Yeah. So if you analyze too much, you lose the concentration. If you keep concentrating, you're not capable of analyzing. Yeah, that's why initially we do those two meditations separately. First we do concentration meditation, and then we do the analytical meditation, right? So for an initial practitioner like us, or like me, so then you have to do separately because we cannot combine it yet, right? So that's why we do those meditations separate. Later on, when you get calm abiding, that means you can concentrate on an object as long as you wish. If it's a minute, if it's an hour, a day, a week, a month, a year, it's possible with calm abiding. Yeah, if you have 6 months time off and you have all the right conditions, you can get it. Yeah. Some people take a bit longer, some people do it quicker. There's one story about one student of Theo Gyobang Rinpoche, one of the great masters in Tibet before escape to India. So also when he came in Dalhousie, he had a few students, and one layperson, not a monk or nun, a layperson, got calm abiding within a few weeks. Very interesting. So he could stay for hours at a time. And then he told the people who brought him food, because they were all in a kind of group retreat in their own huts. Everybody has their own hut, and then to meditate, a very quiet area in Dalhousie, North India. And so he told already less food. And then he gave up food because he was just, in this state. And then he got all these clairvoyance kind of things about past lives, and then you could read the mind of the people in the other hut. A very interesting phenomena. So that means that if you have this calm abiding, you can stay for as long as you wish, and then it becomes very profound, right? Very interesting. So then, after that calm abiding that comes to mind, then without losing that calm abiding, it says within calm abiding, there's a possibility of analyzing, If you accomplish that, then there's even more bliss of the mind, it says in the scripture. So that's what it says here, the unified part of calm abiding and special insight. So if you have that kind of concentration combined with this analytical approach of great bliss to analyze emptiness, you can imagine that mind becomes very powerful, right? So that's what we're going to focus upon in the future, and that's what we make prayers for when we read this kind of verse. So now, if you do your concentration meditation as well as your analytical meditation, you create courses for that to happen, right? And then, in accordance with those courses, with the correct motivation, you should make prayers for that to happen in the future, because it's not impossible. Even lay people, you see, can accomplish those states of mind. It's very inspiring. It's very inspiring to hear those stories and to read biographies and see what these meditators, how they did it, how they accomplished it, and it's very interesting. You learn a lot. Of course, from the texts and scriptures, we learn a lot, but from the stories or talk with meditators or people who when I meet my own teachers, when I go back to India, sometimes these conversations come up. It's very inspiring. Sometimes we have a few lamas together, or some of the lamas do some rituals, so self-initiation, something like that. And then there's tea in between, or during, or after, or before. And then talk about these kind of incredible stories. It's very inspiring. Yeah. So that's good to know those stories. So, and then also we can relate that. Then what we talk and discuss doesn't remain dry. It becomes kind of lively. Yeah. So we have to study it, and then we have to analyze it, and then slowly understanding will become more profound, and then one day we'll reach the conclusion and we get it, right? Yeah, so as Adam said in the beginning, maybe it's going to happen today. Yeah, so let's see. But yeah, if not, then at least in the near future, right? Yeah, so maybe today I thought we do also a short meditation. We did one meditation on one and different, remember? Right? And then last Wednesday, we did a meditation on interdependence, right? Yeah, so today I thought we do meditation in regards or relation with the sevenfold reasoning of Chandakirti, which actually combines those two meditations in one. So the sevenfold reason of Chandakirti is one of the most precious instructions on the selflessness of a person, you know. He has the example of a chariot, you know, kind of, you know, or a car. We can also use, you know, that, you know, yeah. So, and then he relates it back to the aggregates. You know, so it's every phenomena out there we can take it as an example, you know. But if you take your own body and your own mind, you know, then first of all we have to have a clear picture how the I appears, as we discussed last few times, with strong emotions or afflictions that come up, right? Or close to death, you know, almost dying. So then fear arises, combines not only fear that we have to recognize, but the fear arises from this concrete I, be afraid to lose something, you see? So that's how that I appears, that should be recognized. Or when somebody criticizes you, you know, or you have those kind of thoughts, oh, my time, or my precious time, my computer, my this, my that. You know, how that I appears to the mind, that has to be recognized. Yeah? So that's the same as we did in the previous two meditations. So now this sevenfold reasoning is being summarized in that you look for this I, but actually cannot find it among body and mind. Right? So because you cannot find it among the parts and a collection of parts, as we discussed last time. And you cannot find it being one or different from the body and mind. And you cannot find it as an entity that is inherently possessing the article or the aggregates. You know, that's a new thing. Yeah? So the first two we already discussed, right? It's not one and not different. And it's not among the parts and the collection of parts of the body and mind we cannot find. Yeah? So those two things we actually discussed. So this, so that's 2 times 2 is, yeah. Anyway, yeah, keep it simple. So this point of there's no controller possessing the aggregates, so to say, right? So that's yeah. That's also one point of this meditation of the sevenfold reasoning. So one and different are 2, right? Then the I doesn't inherently depend upon the aggregates, neither do the aggregates inherently depend upon the self. Yeah, so that's the thing we did last time. Yeah? The interdependence proves that this cannot be the case. So there's also 2, yeah, so there's 4. And then it doesn't really possess inherently the aggregates. Yeah, that's number 5. And then 6 and 7 are more easily to refute because the collection itself is not the I, neither is the shape of our body the I. You see? So the last 2 is quite easy to recognize. But today we take the first. If you meditate on the 7 points of Chandakirti, then mainly in the Prasangika we meditate on the first 5 we just talked about, right? One and different, yeah, inherent dependence of self upon the aggregates and the aggregates upon the self. So there's no inherent dependence like that. There's no I that inherently depend upon the aggregates, and there's no aggregates that inherently depend upon something like an I that appears. It appears like that, but if you look for it, you cannot really find it, right? And the I also doesn't really, it's not as a separate controller, separate from body and mind, inherently, right? It appears like that. It doesn't appear separate. Sometimes that's kind of a quiet grasping at itself, but most of the time it appears to be mixed with body and mind. You know, that's the kind of innate grasping at the self. So this innate grasping of the self, that has to be tackled, because that's the root of samsara. You know, so yeah. So we combine a little bit like that. So you first get a clear picture how the I appears, and then you search. That's what it says in Tibetan. Tell, to search. Yeah? So very interesting. If you just, if you know what's inside your body a little bit, it can be very helpful in this meditation. Some people, one of my friends, when they see a picture of some blood, he faints or something like that. So yeah, but if you really know what's inside the body, it can be extremely helpful in this meditation. Yeah, so otherwise you just think, you know, from the tip of your toe, you scan to the crown of your head, and you see, you know, there's all these bones and muscles and vessels and organs and those kind of things. So there's no concrete I to be found within these different parts, right? Yeah. So that's one part, you know. And the mind, same thing. We have these simple thoughts coming and going, right? And then we see something, we hear something, we think something, we taste something. You know, this is also in that process. There's nothing concrete I that is present. It appears like that, but actually, if you analyze, you cannot find it like that. You see. So that's how you do this kind of contemplation. You look how if it exists the way it appears, because that's what we have to analyze, right? Because the way it appears is a problem, right? It appears as I am mine, and that causes afflictions to arise, and we believe that's true. So the question is that actually reality or not? You know? So it's very funny, because actually it's very sad, sad in one way, but funny in the other way. Samsara is quite a joke. You know? It's very sad what's happening with the suffering, but it's actually a joke, because that's what I like with the term of David Bohm, is a show, he says. A show. You see? Very interesting. Because it appears and we believe that's reality, and then we act according to that. Right? So, but actually it doesn't exist the way it appears. So since beginner's lifetime, we believe something that actually doesn't exist, and that's exactly the cause for all the problems. So it's quite funny. You see that? Something that doesn't exist, we think it does exist, and that's why it causes the problems. So it's, yeah, very funny material. Yeah. So the more you contemplate, the happier you should become, I think, because you can see the grasping at concrete existence becomes less and less and less and less, right? So that means that what the Holiness says, that if you contemplate emptiness well and on a regular basis, also the mind becomes more subtle, His Holiness says, you know, because these afflictions are very coarse forms of mind. You know? If people commit a crime, we think, oh, that's coarse, right? Because of these very heavy, you know, coarse minds, of strong attachment or strong anger, you know, very coarse minds. And so the mind can become much more subtle. You know? So, and if you contemplate emptiness, automatically, because that concrete aspect of reality is being taken down slowly, you know, so then the mind becomes more subtle. The subtler the mind becomes, you know, then the afflictions also don't arise that easily anymore, because those building blocks, of course, our minds are not present. So that's why it's also important to relax sometimes and take a few breaths and then contemplate these points. You know, that prevents a lot of afflictions from coming into being. Actually, one of my friends in Pisa University, because Lama Tsongkhapa Institute in Pamaya, asked me many years before to come, but it didn't happen because I was busy with studies and finishing things. But then I went last year, and they have a very nice relationship with the University of Pisa. And there's one professor from neuroscience, a very busy person. So I met him on the airport once, and he said something very interesting. He was doing a new research. first I have to get him out of the box, because he was talking like I understood everything from neuroscience, but I didn't. For me, it was all quite new material, you know. So he said that he was examining in between periods of active thought, there is a kind of silence of the brain, he says, kind of, you know, probably the mind becomes a little bit subtler, you know. So very interesting. He said person with schizophrenia or people with mental issues, severe mental issues, their pattern of these in-between states of less brain activity, right, is completely disturbed. People who are more training, then it follows a particular pattern. I said, oh, that's interesting, because we talk about similar things in Buddhist psychology, that in between thoughts, there's a kind of subtle awareness, you know, which is much more profound than coarser forms of consciousness. So the more you generate those types of subtle awareness, the healthier your mental life becomes. As His Holiness says, then the mind becomes more subtle, and because of that, contemplating emptiness, then it avoids afflictions from coming into being. So it's exactly what this professor from the University of Pisa told me. His name is Angel. Yeah, we had a lot of fun, because it's a very interesting story to how he came to Buddhism. He had a dream of His Holiness. It's very interesting. He never met the Dharma before. Very interesting person. But he's a real scientist. He's really into his own kind of research. But it was a very interesting conversation about this point. So anyway, so that means that this mind, when it's more subtle and contemplates emptiness, then there's great benefit. You know, that's what I just like to address, and that's what His Holiness also says. And then, because of that, then afflictions don't arise. And that is completely true for those who are interested in Dzogchen Mahamudra. If you know, later on, when you ready to practice these things, then there's also talks about these subtle states of mind in different types of awareness. If you meditate on those points, then also afflictions, they lose their potential, right? It's a very profound system, but that can only be done by, you know, well, yeah, you have to prepare well, and yes, some understanding of emptiness, and yeah. But to know those potentials is very interesting to see, you know, and then to see these kind of scientific relationships. Yeah. So yeah, go back to the meditation. So then we try to recognize how the object appears, and then we try to look for it within the body and within the mind. You know, then scan from the tip of your toe to the crown of your head, or outside of the body, and then same as one and different. It's very similar meditation, right? And then in a similar way, your mind, you know, maybe the consciousness is the person, you think, or the consciousness is kind of, the consciousness is kind of the self. So then you look there in the different moments of consciousness, in the different aspects of consciousness, of the 5 senses and mental consciousness, different types of awareness. You know, see if you can find something in that process. You know, same thing. Yeah, so yeah, we give it a try. Ready? Yeah. So first we sit, as we're not sitting yet, yeah, and try to sit a bit more formal. Then in a sofa, it's very easy to sit like that. If I sit in a sofa, I find it very difficult these days. If you used to sit cross-legged on a quite, you know, firm, that's why I made this kind of firm kind of cushion, then sitting in a sofa becomes very difficult. Yeah, or soft bed or something, it becomes kind of more difficult. Yeah. One of my friends in India, Tibetan, he did a 3-year retreat in the Kagyu tradition, and he didn't lay down anymore in the 3 years. Only when sleeping like that. So then he started laying down after the retreat, and he got a lot of pain in his back, he told me. Very interesting. Yeah. So yeah, for us it's the opposite. So yeah, it's just a matter of habituation, I think. So try to concentrate on the breath, and then every in-breath we count as 1, out-breath as 2, and make sure you have these 2 mental factors, alertness and mindfulness, to make sure that we don't get distracted or the mind doesn't get dull, as we just discussed. 2 obstacles of meditation. So try to do that for about a minute or 2, counting of the breath. Yeah. So then when the mind is settled down a bit, then we visualize Sakyamuni Buddha in front and focus on the suffering of sentient beings and think, without realizing emptiness, I will not be able to help them. And with this request, Sakyamuni Buddha is very pleased, and from his heart comes white nectar light to the crown of your head, filling your whole body. And all negative karma gets completely washed away, and all obstacles pacified, and in particular, the obstacle that stands emptiness or understanding of emptiness in the way gets completely washed away. And so think like that when through the visualization of the white nectar light, heart of Sakyamuni Buddha, the crown of your head, filling your whole body. Yeah, so do that for about a minute or two. So then think your whole body is filled with this white nectar light and completely purified, all negative karma and obstacles are removed. And then with the same intention, wanting to realize emptiness to help sentient beings, request the Buddha in front, and this time yellow golden nectar light comes from his heart, crown of your head, fills your whole body. By that you receive all the imprints, all the potentials for the realizations to come about, in particular the realization of emptiness. And so do this visualization of the yellow golden nectar light for about 1 or 2 minutes. So then think your whole body is filled with this golden nectar light and completely suitable to get realization of emptiness. And then you analyze first, how does the I appear in a situation when you get criticized, or somebody points out your mistakes, or strong afflictions like anger or attachment arose. So try to analyze how the I appears. How dare this person say this to me? Or my time, or my computer, or my this, my that. How does that I actually appear? So try to recall that for about a minute or two. So make sure you get a clear picture how it appears, and then hold it. You know, with one point of the mind you hold it, and with the other point of the mind you analyze. Where is it? And then you scan from the tip of your toe to the crown of your head and see if that I, how it appears. Can you find it in those different parts of the body or not? And so try to do that for about a minute or two. And try to see there's nothing concrete to be found within the different parts of the body. So then you check. First you get a clear picture again, how it appears. In those situations, and a clear picture how the I arises. And then check in your mind. Maybe it's not in the body, maybe it's in the mind. And you check the different thoughts since we started until now, different moments, one after the other. Is it within all those parts? Can you find it among those parts? How it appears, that concrete, existing from its own side. Or we see things, we hear things, taste things, feel things, we smell things. So among those different types of consciousness, can you find something that concrete? So try to analyze it for about 2 minutes. So then try to come to a conclusion. Let the I come up again, see how it appears. And then check. We cannot find it among the body. We cannot find it among different types of mind, or the moments of mind. And we cannot find it outside of the body or mind. And it appears to be mixed, so it doesn't exist the way it appears. It's not there. And then focus on this conclusion for about a minute. And then to conclude, Sakyamuni Buddha comes to the crown of your head and becomes smaller and smaller, descends to the level of your heart. And then when it becomes one with your own mind, at the level of your heart, you can also think a little bit about emptiness. There's no concrete I to be found. So, well, mixing the Buddha with your own mind. All right, so we can stop. So, yeah, it can be very interesting meditation. And you can do that when you're in the bus, or now not many people go in the bus. You have to sit with a mask, but you can still. Or when you're cycling, or you have to look a little bit more when you're cycling, but or you sit in the park, something, sit in your room, you can think about these things, right? How does I appear? And how can I find it among the different points of the body and the mind? So that's, yeah. That's yeah, and then for spaciousness, of course, we go back to the text, because without the text, it's very difficult to get a real understanding of emptiness, right? So yeah, you have to do both. You study, then contemplate. Study, contemplate, and slowly discuss things. Then things will slowly, yeah, understanding will generate more and more, right? So that's why the combination of study and practice is so extremely important. Yeah. So in order to do the study part, then where are we? We did 19, right? Those hardcore students. Yeah. Okay. So we are in verse number 20 then. Yeah. 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 So, yeah. People can read themselves, maybe, Adam. I think people have text or not. Are they? Okay. Yeah. Just share them. Okay. 20. That which originates through dependence, this you maintain to be empty. Yeah, because everything is in the nature of interdependence, right? So because of interdependence, that's why emptiness exists. So if you look in the body and mind, you see the dependence of the different parts and the processes. Because of that, there's no I to be found, you see. So that's what it says. You know? Which originate through dependence, you know? That's why, because the momentary changing nature of our body and mind, there's no place for things to be found from its own side. You see that? Yeah, so then you prove with interdependence, you prove things are empty of inherent existence. You see? And because things are empty of inherent existence, that's why there's dependent origination. Yeah, there's two sides of a coin. You know? So this you maintain to be empty. Yeah? So this, yeah. So that no independence entity exists, you know, so means because things are dependent, so independent doesn't exist, right? That's what it says. No independent entity exists, you know, because everything is dependent. In Tibetan epistemology, there's a lot of debates with negatives, double negatives, or the isolate, or the negative of an isolate, or the negative of the opposite of an isolate. You know? So then you calculate, because not table is not table, right? But not table implies a table, right? So if you in the first year of your debate, then you have this mala, right? Mala, and then another person says the opposite of table, right? Which is equal with not table, right? But if you have the opposite of not table, then you have something else. So you calculate the opposites on one point of the mala, and on the other side of the mala you calculate the negatives, because sometimes you say the opposite of not of the opposite of not table, for example. What is that? Yeah. So there's very interesting tricks also in these kind of debates of epistemology, that you can put your opponent in a loop. You know, this kind of zedok. Isolate of substance, I think we translate, right? Yeah. So there's a kind of, it's very interesting. There's a kind of different categories. And then within the category to relate it with another one, there's a way to debate that you always win the debate, that the opponent always goes in a loop and contradicts each other time after time. It's very interesting. Yeah, anyway, it's just for those who, it's great fun sometimes. Yeah. Because your mind becomes, in this form of epistemology, your mind becomes sharper. You know, that's a very good training for analytical meditation. So that's why we spend hours and hours on the debate courtyard every day, year after year, to comprehend this kind of, you know, mind games. Yeah, it's very interesting. Because the mind becomes a bit more alert, not my mind, but it has the power to do. So my mind never really got the benefits, but if you do it correctly, it can bring great benefits and clarity, you know, analyzing things. Yeah. So yeah, that's because it says here, no independent means dependent, right? That's what it means, right? So because independent doesn't exist, because everything is dependent, right? That's why it says that no independent entity exists. You see that? Yeah. You peerless proclaim in the lion's roar. So the lion's roar is referring to fearlessness, right? Because fearlessness in the sense that there's nothing to be feared if you have understand ultimate reality. And there's nothing that can disprove this ultimate reality by power of reasoning, you know? Very interesting. Yeah. So same with David Bohm, when he had this interesting new theory, then people couldn't disprove him, so they just decided to ignore him. Yeah, it's very interesting. So that means that this reality you cannot, you know, contradict. Basically, that's what it says in this verse. This ultimate reality. Yeah. Then verse 21, there it says, since you teach the ambrosia or the nectar of emptiness to help abandon all conceptualizations. So the nectar of emptiness, meaning the nectar that eliminates all suffering, right? You know, it's kind of if people drink nectar, you know, or take nectar. So in Marathika, I told you a few times. Sorry, right? I went to this place in eastern Nepal when the pandemic just started to come across the globe. So I was in this place, and there's also a long life cave, and there's a few other caves. And in one of the caves, there's nectar coming out of the wall. You know, so that's also being considered as very precious nectar to stop diseases or aging or death. Of course, cannot completely stop because they cannot be stopped, you know, but if you have obstacles, life obstacles, then those can be taken away. So many people go to Marathika and come back. They say, oh, you look much younger now all of a sudden. So it happened to me also. Yeah. People told me that. But I was very tired, so I thought, how can you see something like that after an 8-9 hour trip in a jeep over the mountains and through rivers, and the whole body was shaking up, you know? So for me, it was a bit difficult to believe. But yeah, so nectar here in the context of Kasa, nectar to eliminate the suffering of sentient beings, right? Like medicine. Yeah? So emptiness is like that, see? And it says, stop all conceptualizations. It means stop all incorrect forms of concepts with regard to inherent existence, right? Or the concepts of the afflictions. Because conceptual consciousness by itself initially has to be developed. Yes, we know when we contemplate things and when we meditate with mental consciousness, right? So this mental consciousness initially is conceptual. We cannot see, hear, or smell or taste emptiness. We have to analyze in a conceptual way with mental consciousness. So initially it's conceptual, and then later on, where we just said, you know, the union of calm abiding and special insight, you know, we just refer to that verse. When that's been accomplished, then later on you realize emptiness directly, and then the conceptual aspect disappears. Right? So when we say Tayata, Gata Gata, Paragata, Parasamgata, Bodhisoha, right? So Tayata, Gata Gata, there's two levels, Gata Gata. It's still emptiness is conceptual. The realization of emptiness is conceptual. Similar as we meditate now, but then you realize it in a conceptual manner. You think about it, right? With the mental images. Paragate, you know, then you realize emptiness directly. You see emptiness like we see the screen of Zoom with our eyes. That clear. Yeah. So gata gata paragate, parasamgate bodhisoha, and then eventually bodhisoha means you achieve the state of enlightenment. Yeah. So here, stop or abandon all conceptualizations. You should know that's the incorrect forms of consciousness of conceptualizations, right? He who clings to this, or adherence, yeah, clings is Shenpa in Tibetan. It's kind of adherence or grasps to emptiness existing inherently is also incorrect, because emptiness itself is also empty of inherent existence, right? Emptiness by itself also comes by the power of causes and conditions, right? Or depending, I should say, depend upon causes and conditions, and depends upon merely imputed by the mind, right? And emptiness is always empty of something, and that is in relation with an object. Emptiness of the person, emptiness of the table, emptiness of the mind. Yeah? So there's the interdependence of emptiness and its object, and what it's empty of, inherent existence. Yeah. So that's Kasa. Yeah, verse number 21. Is quite tough, is it? The verses. Yeah, but yeah, it's very interesting. Yeah, so yeah, if you think about it in this way, it's not all that difficult. It's kind of, because emptiness also is in the nature of interdependence, right? So that means that emptiness itself cannot exist inherently, like our mind and our body. There's no self to be found. And also emptiness does not exist on its own side. Yeah, I made some notes. Yeah, so 22, since they are inert, dependent, empty, like an illusion, yeah, and arisen out of conditions. So all phenomena are, you know, the things outside, the flower, the table, our body, all comes about by the power of causes and conditions, right? Yeah? So nothing exists from its own side. So this appearance that things exist from its own side, that's an illusion. You see that? Cause and effect is not an illusion because cause and effect conventionally exist. But thinking that things exist inherently without causes and conditions, that's an illusion, right? Sometimes it appears the Zoom and the computer appears very concrete out there. You know, then we say, oh yeah, but it's not that concrete because it depends on the power, it depends on the connection, and it depends on many causes and conditions. But the first moment, it appears that not like that. It appears very concrete. Yeah, and that concrete aspect is like an illusion, right? That's what we say. Yeah. Because it's, you have made it familiar to the world that all phenomena lack reality or lack inherent existence. Yeah, when we say lack this, or no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, you know, those kind of things, meaning no, 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 or in Russian, niet, niet, niet. It means that yeah, once in Bulgaria, I think is very nice. His Holiness has such incredible vast vision of all the traditions, you know. So we always ask every day another group to recite the Heart Sutra in their own language, you know. So when it's time for the Koreans, then it's different. When Chinese come, and English people, they always read from the paper. The Heart Sutra, there's no melody yet. There's a very good melody. It should actually be used in the future. But yeah, it's kind of different. And then the Russians, they have a lot of niet, 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 meaning not no eye, no ear. So you know more or less where they are, you know. Because when they say a lot of niet, 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 they know they say in the part of no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind. Yeah, very interesting. But then, even more inspiring, there's a school, you know, from Root Institute. They also have a school and hospital, and the children from the school, they're trained by one of the members from the center in Bangalore, DT, to recite the Heart Sutra in Sanskrit, and they did in Kazakh from memory. It's very inspiring. His Holiness was kind of very emotional the first time. It's very inspiring, you know. Yeah. So yeah, that means when it says no this, no that, then meaning no inherent this or no inherent that. Yeah. Yeah, that's verse number 22. Yeah. Then 23, there's nothing that you have brought forth that is nothing that you have negated, meaning everything is in the nature, you know, of cause and effect. And because of that, things arise and come about and disintegrate merely by the power of cause and conditions, right? Things are not inherently coming about and inherently disintegrating, right? So that's what you have negated, meaning nothing exists from its own side. There's no from its own side existing coming into being, and from its own side existing disappearing, right? You have comprehended that suchness, as it was before, so it is afterwards. It's also almost like poetry, right? That means that emptiness is there since beginner's lifetime. It's nothing new to be invented. It's just we never realized it. That's the problem. But emptiness of our body, our mind, for example, is there since beginner's lifetime, according to Buddhist philosophy and psychology, right? So our mind since beginner's lifetime is empty of inherent existence. But we never saw that aspect. That's the problem. But it has always been empty of inherent existence. And it always will. That's what it means when we read it in verse number 20, you know, like a lion's roar is kind of, you cannot find something else because there's ultimate reality. You know, that ultimate reality is there since beginner's lifetime. It's a very interesting phenomenon. So everything arises from that ultimate reality, or its dependence, better one, depends upon this ultimate reality. You know, and then things are by nature empty of inherent existence, but they appear concrete. You see? Yeah. So that's, you can think about the two truths in that way and relate that with David Bohm's kind of theory of, you know. Yeah, there's many more points to say to that, because it also talks about conventional, subtle forms of conventional reality, you know, it's intrinsic and explicit, and so, you know, anyway, so that's not the topic of today, but there's many things to say about it. So things are in the nature of interdependence, and that's why nothing can exist from its own side, right? So then on verse number 24, it says, without entering the meditation, as shown by the noble ones, can consciousness ever become signless? Yeah, so that means, of course, signless means also without inherent existence, right? So actually the meaning here, if you don't enter meditation, you will not enter liberation. And what kind of meditation? The meditation on emptiness. Yeah, so that meditation depends on hearing, studying, you know, contemplation and meditation, right? The three forms of wisdom that has to be generated, right? So the wisdom of hearing or studying, very important to get a clear picture of what we're talking about. Then is the wisdom of contemplation. Then you analyze, you know, yeah. And then the wisdom of meditation. You come to a conclusion and you focus on that conclusion, right? So if you're a scientist and you analyze quantum mechanics, but you just keep your mind into, you know, the mathematics, and you don't sit down and relax and think about it, then probably it's very difficult to understand what's happening. You know? So David Bohm, so luckily, he was thinking about things in a different picture, from a different angle. So then you get more understanding. You know? So that means we need those three levels of intelligence. You know, intellectual kind of knowledge by itself is not enough. You have to contemplate it, reason it, you know, and then you use epistemology, and then you meditate on it, right? So that's why sometimes you see a lot of scientific research being done, but then the person who writes about that kind of scientific research maybe doesn't have that much kind of knowledge of the statistics, and then they take the conclusions out of the how do I say that? Out of context, yeah. Thank you. So to take it out of context, you know. So, but if you analyze things and then you contemplate and meditate, then some other insights can come. You know, that's why when His Holiness meets with the scientists are so impressed with the logic or the questions His Holiness comes up with they never thought about before. Though they're studying the material for years, and His Holiness just, you know, in a few minutes get a little bit idea what's going on and ask a question. You know, it's very interesting. Yeah. So there's a training in logic and reasoning. Yeah, epistemology, if it's being used correctly, there's a lot of material to be said about when it's a valid reason, when not, how to proceed. You know, is a whole subject by itself. It's very dry, I tell you. It was not my favorite subject, but it's very dry material. But yeah, very profound. You know, so when understood well, then you know how to analyze. Yeah? So, and then I see, having a scientific background, that these forms of reasoning is mind-boggling. It comes to similar conclusions. You know. Anyway, so that's yeah. My interest sometimes goes in that direction a little bit. Yeah, so verse 25 is more or less similar, right? Without entering meditation on, you know, on emptiness, you cannot achieve liberation, you know? So then you have declared that, so presented this, you know, form of signlessness, or signlessness is just another term of without inherent existence, right? It is entirely in the Great Vehicle Sutra. So in all that's why Nagarjuna says here, it's not his own made-up thing, right? It's based on the Buddha's words, these kind of points. When Nagarjuna wrote the collections of 6 you know, texts on reasoning, proving emptiness, the most famous one is the Fundamental Wisdom, right? Then he composed another text after those 6 collections about that his research was based upon the teaching of the Buddha and not own made. You know? Yeah, so same, yeah, the quotations, so to say, of the Buddha's scriptures proving his validity of his theory. You know, so it's yeah. And then verse number 26 is in the conclusion, right? By praising you, a vessel of word of praise, whatever merits I may have obtained. To this may all beings, without exception, become free from the boundaries of this, to the signs, so from the bondage to inherent existence, and so that's very interesting. He comes to this. He praised the Buddha because of his emptiness teaching and teaching on interdependence, and then whatever merits there has been obtained, he dedicates, for all sentient beings to be free. So there's a difference for those who are interested in dedication and prayer. Did I talk about it before? I think I did. Do you remember? So you can give the answer or not? So that means prayer means may all sentient beings be free of suffering, or may I become a Buddha, right? While a dedication is by the power of this virtue, may this come about. You see, there's a difference. The prayer is just a mere wish, while virtue is being dedicated to a particular goal. That's called a dedication. So whenever we do practices in daily life or things like here, then we set a good motivation, we talk about things or discuss, and then we dedicate, right? Yeah, so that's dedication. You say, by the power of these good deeds I've done, may this and this come about. So that's the virtue. And then when you dedicate, it's also important to contemplate, these points of emptiness. Then the dedication, the prayer becomes more profound in the future to come about. So that's, So then read from Tibetan, from the auspiciousness. 19 we did. No, 19 we did, right? Yeah, I think. Yeah. Tenjen Rawa Ganjungwa, Deni Guni Tumbache, Mobo Rangwang Yemenche, Nyame Kyugi Sengida. So that means, the roar of a lion. So kind of fearless kind of teachings on emptiness. Punto Tanje Pangwajer, Tony Dutze Tonzena, Kanji Dela Shekuba, Deni Kyugi Shidami. So that means it's like the nectar. Emptiness is like the nectar eliminating all suffering. Bembo Shenwang Tombani, Guma Shinde Genjungwa, Gombo Gyogi Chogungi, Mome Gombar Zebala. So it talks about everything is in nature of cause and effect relationships, and nothing exists from its own side, right? And that's what appears to exist from its own side. That's just an illusion, or as David Bohm says, it's just a show. I like that term. Yeah. Kyogi Jungsik Majeshin Kelyang Kagba Majila Yogi Chitar Jideshin Deshin Nigi Tuksuchu. So that talks about that emptiness there from beginning, and in the beginning and in the end. Everything has always been empty of inherent existence and always will be. Papa Namgi Tempai Gomba Goma Shuba Tsemedi Namba Sheba Karagyur. So that means Kagyuram, sorry. So that means that you have to enter meditation, otherwise you will never enter the Arya paths. Sema Mela Mashubar Tarba Mechin Sungwachir Dechi Kyugi Tekchen Nam Malu Pani Deni Ten. So that means everything is similar to verse 24, 25, that you have to eventually meditate on emptiness in order to enter the vehicles, right? Then the dedication. Tuba Nyugyu Tuba Le Dagi Sunam Kang Toba Deni Drova Malu Nam Sema Chingla Drogyu Chik. So that's the dedication of that all all transmigrators may be liberated without exception, it says, no? You say Malupa, without exception, may be free of the bondage of psychic existence. There's a few small letters. It's not in your text, I think. Oh, it is in text, yeah. Jitin le deba tebas, the title. Loben parvadudo ki zebas also. Kya kya gembo pandita dans kare. They don't clear. Kembo kya kya kembo Krina Pandita dance Lotsawa Tsutum. So there's a translator. That's our Tsutum, Gyawa Kyutings, Shude, Tenla Babos. So yeah, that's text in Tibetan. So I read a bit from the beginning. So I read from the beginning. So I received this text from His Holiness Dalai Lama in Bulgaria, I think, at least 2 times. So very precious text. So the oral lineage is all the way up from Nagarjuna, to His Holiness. It's very precious. So read from the beginning, and then read from the beginning, think that in all future lifetimes, never departed from this teaching, especially Nagarjuna's works, in order to eliminate the suffering for all sentient beings. Yeah, so it concludes. Concludes the 5 series. Maybe you dream about emptiness. Yeah, I have not realized. Let's hope. It's only says, if you, that he sometimes dreams he's teaching emptiness or meditating on emptiness in a dream. Can you imagine? So the more you habituate your mind, the more possibility is there, right? Mostly like my mind is habituated to the afflictions, so then my dreams are filled with afflictions. But if you motivate and try to have your mind focused upon virtue, then also the dream becomes virtue, right? Because the dream, or sleeping consciousness, so to say, is kind of a changeable mental factor for those who have studied mind and mental factor. So that means it can change according to your intention. So, and if you contemplate a lot of things in retreat, sometimes can happen. You have meditations according to the things you reflect upon. So it's very profound, because if you can do that like His Holiness, then of course like His Holiness, but if you just a mere thoughts about emptiness in the dream can be extremely causing incredible results to come about. So yeah, anyway, it's just inspiring to hear that from His Holiness, in that way. So anyway, thank you very much for all the incredible interest. I hope it was not too boring, and I hope it was a bit of, I try to juice it up a bit now and then, but yeah, emptiness by itself needs some effort. Without effort, His Holiness says, Shukyab Gogare. Shuk means force. Kyab means is kind of verbalizer, so to become forceful in our efforts. That's what it means. His Holiness says to the monks very often, Shukyab Gogamato. Meaning meaning you have to work hard. You don't relax too much. This kind of time to because now we have this incredible teaching available. It's not going to last forever. So the more effort we put in understanding it, the more benefits will come. Right. So that's So thank you very much for your incredible interests. And today Adam, his last week he already got a certificate, and now he's promoting. So yeah, he will be asked again and again, I'm afraid. So thank Adam for hosting today, and all the other people who host in the past, and Jamyang for helping out and creating all the right conditions for this to happen, and hosting me in the beautiful rooms, and compared to when I lived in before, it's like living as a king, basically. Yeah, I've carpet all over, across the whole room. I never had that before. So it's quite amazing. Yeah, so thank you very much. And then, if there's any questions, then we can still do a few. I mean, it's already time, but...
We have got a question from Laura.
There's quite a bit. Yeah, okay, no problem.
I'll see if she wants to ask it.
Yeah. Great, thank you. Thank you. This is such an interesting text. It's very, I'll have to read it again and again. My question is this. My question is this. So I was looking at verses 22 and 23. And the question is, since emptiness itself doesn't exist from its own side, then when somebody has direct perception of emptiness, is what they perceive also an illusion?
Very good question. So emptiness is empty of itself, right? Meaning emptiness also doesn't exist from its own side, right? So that being the case, because where I said emptiness, or what it says in the text, I should say, empty is empty of something, right? So emptiness of the table depends on the table, right? Yeah, so that means there's interdependence of emptiness and object, right? Emptiness of table depends on the table, yeah? And depends on us talking about it. So it means that emptiness by itself cannot exist from its own side. Is in the nature of interdependence. And then a person who has direct perception of emptiness, at the time there's direct perception, only the lack of inherent existence appears, nothing else. Right? Not that it's an illusion whatsoever, only the lack of true existence or inherent existence appears to the mind. When that meditator comes out of that meditation, then, because then things appear concrete, but he sees it as an illusion, because then conceptual consciousness comes, right? At a time of deep meditation, it's a direct perception of emptiness without conceptual consciousness, right? So when he comes out of the meditation, then things appear to the mind, very concrete out there, but he straight away knows by the power of a strong meditation is just a mere illusion. It appears as an illusion. You see that? So there's two different things, at the time of deep meditation and at the time of coming out of that meditation. So at the time of deep meditation, it says emptiness is like the absence of true existence appears, like the sky. Like the sky, it says, right? Not exactly the same, like the sky. But when it comes out of the meditation and things appear again, then there's conventional reality appearing, and then it's just like an illusion. And also then he can think about, emptiness is also doesn't exist from its own side. It's like an illusion. What is an illusion? What is an illusion? The inherent appearance of it. That's an illusion, not emptiness itself. Yeah.
So would the inherent appearance of during meditation, if you let's keep it to the sky, if you kind of realize that emptiness is the lack of inherent existence, and so is this sort of sky, is that also an illusion?
If you think it's sky and you actually visualize something like that, then that's an illusion. Because then that sky appears. You're not meditating on emptiness at the time, because that sky appears also inherently. Yeah, think about
I'll keep thinking about it. Yeah. Thank you.
A very good statement that, it's not an easy text and it takes time. Yeah.
Next question we have is from Martin.
Thank you, Geshe. That was really good. I enjoyed it. Thank you. My question is that if I can understand this correctly, consciousness is empty of inherent existence. In conventional reality, we think that consciousness exists and it's individualized, and it belongs to each of us, and it has no beginning and no end. But in ultimate reality, consciousness itself is empty of inherent existence. It also is empty. My question is about how that relates to, or the similarities between that and Jivatma and Paramatma in Hindu beliefs. The idea that, I know we say that consciousness is different from an Atma, but it would seem to me that, I'm not an expert on Hinduism, but it would seem to me that Jivatma is like consciousness insofar as it appears to exist with the individual, and it appears to be solid or concrete. Yeah. But in ultimate reality, if you like, Paramatma is everything. It is the sum of everything, and therefore empty. It seems to me it's almost semantics, that how we differentiate the difference between consciousness and emptiness and Jivatma, Paramatma, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so that's very important to understand how we define Atma, right? That's the most important thing before we actually start discussing. Yeah, so we say in the Buddhist philosophy, also we say there is an Atma we accept, which is conventional, merely imputed person based upon the mere collection of body and mind, right? So that we can call an Atma, right? So that exists, but if you think that there is something existing permanent from its own side, right? Or a controller or a creator that is beyond law of cause and effect, that kind of Atma we cannot accept. You see that? And this Maha-Atma, that things become all interconnected, is very interesting. Also David Bohm come to, because of Krishnamurti's view on this point, right? So it's true, if you contemplate emptiness, you see the interconnectedness, right? Or whole, everything is like one big kind of universal kind of relationships with each other, right? Wholeness, right? This completeness. Yeah. So that implies this kind of, Maha-Atma, this kind of universal consciousness, as some people think, right? But there's an idea of that there's everything lacks concrete existence, so that quality, right? That everything lacks concrete existence, sees that everything is in the same nature, right? So if you give the interpretation to this Maha-Atma in that way, then it's correct. Because it all has the same quality. Everything is the emptiness of inherent existence of our mind, of the table, of you, of me, it's all the same. So in that regard, it's all the same. But we remain to be two individual streams of consciousness. It's not that the consciousness, they merge together. You see? So that's a kind of distinction there.
Sorry, could you say that last part again, the distinction? So
that your consciousness being empty of inherent existence, and my consciousness being empty of inherent existence, and all the other people here on the screen, and the people in London, the rest of the planet, the emptiness of inherent existence of all our consciousnesses is exactly the same. Yeah. So that quality we all share together, right? But that doesn't mean that our individual conventional stream of consciousness are the same. Because they,
yes, yeah. I need to think about that. I think I see what you're getting at, but I'll think about it.
Because how pizza tastes to you and to me, or a particular strawberry jam tastes to you and to me, is different, right? But that depends on previous inclinations, which we call the law of cause and effect within a continuum of person, which we consider as karma. Right?
Yeah. So it's almost like Paramatma is, in the Hindu psychology, it's the idea that there's Paramatma and then there's individualized Atmas within that might be different. But in Buddhist idea of emptiness, you can't differentiate because it is all one anyway. It's all empty of inherent existence. So you can't start talking about Paramatma being split into many parts because there are no parts. Am I getting it?
But there's different interpretations of the Paramatma. I expect one of my friends in Bangalore had once a discussion, was very well versed in Hindu philosophy. He said, from the point of view of practice, you become one with the teacher, right? As we also have in Mahamudra practices. So your consciousness merge with this universal consciousness, right? There's a kind of particular practice that can be done. So he gave me the interpretation. He said there's two faults. There's two possibilities of giving the interpretation, meaning the qualities of your mind and the qualities of the mind of your guru becomes one. You see, the same, your nature of the mind and my nature of the mind, they are exactly the same. Your emptiness of inherent existence and my emptiness of inherent existence, exactly the same. But it doesn't mean the two consciousnesses of us, they merge together. You see that?
Yeah.
On the point of view of practice also, they merge, you imagine that in order to get a blessing of that quality. It's kind of a technique. Anyways. You got it a little bit or not?
No, that's really helpful. Thank you. Something to contemplate. Much appreciated. Thank you.
All right.
We've got quite a few other questions. So there's another question by Marco next.
Okay.
Aida has a question first.
Okay, good. Two questions. In Dutch or in English?
You have time for two questions. Well, so my question is related to Laura's, and I just wanted to ask you, Geshe, about when we were doing the Lamgrim retreat. There was this beautiful passage in the principal aspects of the path that said appearances eliminate existence, emptiness eliminates non-existence. And I have to admit that I've been thinking about it for the past 3 weeks to try to grasp that. So maybe this is like the moment where maybe you could expound a bit more on that in relation also to Laura's question, what you were saying about emptiness realization in meditation, and then coming out and realizing also the realization of emptiness is empty of inherent nature.
You point out one of the verses in the three principal aspect of the path, which has a lot of debates, you know, and a lot of interpretations and a lot of things going back and forth. But the final conclusion means that, you know, before we talked about dependent origination, remember? So dependent meaning it eliminates the extreme of, what did it say? Eternalism, right? I think we translated before like that. That because things are dependent, nothing can exist from its own side, right? So that things exist from its own side is eternalism. Let's go to the extreme of that all things exist from its own side, right? So because things are dependent, that cannot exist in that way. So that's the benefit of the first term. Origination, dependent origination, the second term proves that things conventionally exist and come into being. And that prevents you from falling into the extreme of nihilism, that nothing exists at all. Right? So we have two extremes. Either things exist inherently or nothing exists at all. Right? So we believe in the first, and there's a danger of falling in the second. So if you have the reason of interdependence or dependent origination, that helps you not to fall into those two extremes because of the first syllable, dependent, you know, prevents you from falling to an extreme of eternalism, that all things exist from their own side, and origination prevents you from falling to the extreme of nihilism, right? You see that? Yeah. So that's a general explanation of the two terms, according to different forms of psychology and philosophy, right? So then in this particular verse of the three principal aspects of the path, the opposite is also true because of interdependence, you know. So then also related with that verse, some scholars, they say, give an example for you easy to relate to, the result depends on the cause to come about, right? Without a cause, there's no effect. But the Prasangika also says, without effect, there's no cause. You know, because we say effect based upon how we define a cause. And we say a cause based on how we define an effect. An effect, by depending upon its next moment, can be the cause of its next moment. Right? And moment number 3 can be the result of moment number 1. You see that? So there's an interdependence between cause and effect from the point of view of mere imputed by the mind. What we call small or big depends how we define small and how we define big, right? So in a similar way, the effect is being labeled upon understanding what a cause is. And the cause is being labeled upon what we understand as an effect is. You see that? So in that context, this verse number 2 also turns those two terms over, you know? You see that? That emptiness proves appearance and appearance proves emptiness. Yeah? Does it help a bit or not? It's a very complex verse, yeah.
Thank you again. His Holiness, in his last teaching on the Madhyamaka, mentioned that in order to meditate on emptiness, one needs to realize that the fundamental nature of the mind is clarity.
Yeah.
Is this the same as calm abiding? And what are the causes and conditions for this state? How does one practice? How can one practice? What is it?
Yeah. So the clarity of the mind, I don't know in which context His Holiness put it that, but basically, if you want to become a Buddha, right, you have to create the causes for Buddha's body and Buddha's mind, right? And in order to understand the Buddha's mind, we have to have a very subtle mind. It is something sometimes defined as a clear light mind, Yeah, it's very well defined in the Buddhist Tantra, so the Vajrayana practice, and well, High Yoga Tantra. So in that context, there's a mind that is free of stains of afflictions, extremely subtle. So that mind goes all the way up to Buddhahood. If that mind you can make manifest by the power of certain practices, it is quite advanced, right? But there are meditators who are capable of doing that. So that means, and at a time of death, for example, a dance, that's why these meditators of the clear light mind of death, they stay in that meditation, or that, apprehension, or that appearance of that mind to realize emptiness, that subtle mind, So of course the consciousness have stopped. That's why we say this person is considered as dead, because there's no heartbeat, no lung function at that time anymore. But the clear light mind is still present. Yeah, so this is the most subtle mind that can be generated. Full stop. So because it's the most subtle mind, that's the most subtle mind that goes all the way up to Buddhahood. Yeah. So in order to understand the mind of the Buddha, which is a mind that directly realizes emptiness, as well as all conventional reality, then at the time of training, the practitioner generates this most subtle mind and then uses that to realize emptiness. And there's a non-duality between emptiness and this most subtle mind, which is referring to the non-duality of the two truths at the level of Buddhahood. And that's been eventually realized directly, so that becomes the direct cause for the direct perception of the two truths in the minds of a Buddha. Yeah, that's a very short summary, a study you can do for a few years if you have the right initiations and the right authority being given by the teachers. Then yeah, it's a very profound system actually, but yeah, because you ask, sometimes it's better to explain than to keep it secret and hide it. But yeah, that's yeah. Another time we can do a much more, yeah, that's another kind of classification of teaching. Yeah.
May I use this occasion to request teachings in this, Geshe?
Yeah, I tell you, if you do the whole basic program, then in the end, we will talk about it. After year 5 or something, yeah. Because if you're not prepared, then, I request many teachings from my own teachers, and sometimes you just don't give. And they say, yeah, later, and then later comes. Because, yeah, you have to prepare from different angles. Knowledge, you have to understand emptiness a bit better. Then, prepare the mind in the lamrim to have the right motivation, right? Yeah, so, yeah, anyway, there's many stories, but it's getting late. Yeah. Yeah, one time. Yeah.
Are you okay to answer more questions, Geshe?
I'm okay, but I don't know if people falling asleep already? No. That's it.
The next question's from Sam.
Hi, thank you, Geshe. I've also really enjoyed this series, so thank you. My question is about how this topic is presented in Lamrim texts. And it seems that basically there are two kinds of, sorry, my cat's invading.
Yeah. Tail coming up, yeah.
You've got the sort of presentation of the Chandrakirti sevenfold reasoning that you talked about today.
Yeah.
And there's also the analysis of the 4 kinds of production.
Yeah.
So my question is whether it's that every meditator needs to do both of these contemplations, either like alternating or in sequence or combining in some way, or is it that every meditator will have mainly one of them according to their mind or something like this, that they choose mainly one to realize emptiness?
Yeah.
And then also if a meditator is trying to realize emptiness in the context of Mahamudra practice, are they still using these 1 or 2 of these same reasonings, or are they doing something completely different?
Yeah, very good question. So, because to realize emptiness is not easy, you need a lot of reasonings. Yeah, so sometimes you have to see what reason is for you most beneficial, right? And then which reason you understand better. And then you have to move back and forth, because you need so many angles to tackle ignorance, That's why it says, no I, no this, no that. It's all to habituate our mind to cut all those apprehension of inherent existence to all those objects we had since beginner's lifetime. You see, so that's why this fourfold reasoning of you know, how things arise should be actually, or the abandonment of the incorrect forms of the four types of arising of the seed and the sprout, for example. You contemplate that, then you go back to the sevenfold reasoning of Chandrakirti again. In the individual parts, you take a separate contemplation, then you take it as a whole. It's a kind of a mixture in order to move forward, right? But eventually, to first realize emptiness, you focus upon the selfness of a person. So the sevenfold reason of Chandrakirti, rather than, you know, the sprout and the seed, right? The sprout and the seed kind of reasonings, or the emptiness of phenomena, helps us to build this understanding of interdependence, right? So then later on, that helps you to make your reason stronger, to prove that body and mind is also in that kind of process of cause and effect relationships. So the stronger your reason is, the easier it is to refute that I cannot exist inherently. You see that? Yeah. So then today all questions about clear light mind and Mahamudra. Normally you don't talk about these things, but yeah. I mean, people, they talk about Mahamudra this and that, but to do real Mahamudra, Chakya Chenpo in Tibetan. So this one says very clearly, Chak means emptiness. Chenpo means the most subtle mind. You know, so to realize the most subtle mind, if you don't have practice, it's probably very difficult. You know, there's all people talking about, but there's so many levels of mind, right? So there's a danger of people not recognizing the subtle mind and recognizing a more coarser one and thinking that's the subtle one. You see? So that's, Mahamudra sounds very exciting, and Dzogchen is extremely exciting, but one of my own teachers, also in Nyingma tradition, is very traditional. First you go into stages, you know. Then, because if you read the commentaries, then it's very clearly, if you don't have a little bit idea of this, what this mind is all about, and you're missing out on instructions from a qualified teacher, there's a danger of having kind of contemplations or meditations on a subtle mind, or sorry, a mind you think is a subtle mind, but it's just kind of a mental dullness or something like that. And there's a danger. I've seen people meditating incorrectly and the mind becomes really dull. And as Holiness also mentioned a few times in meditators. So that's not very productive. Yeah, so that's why it's better to first do Lam Rim and train the mind well in Lam Rim, and then slowly do preliminary practices, get the right instructions, you know, especially with Mahamudra, get initiations and the right commentaries, and then it starts to make sense, right? And then what happens, if you can generate a subtle mind, then what you do at that time, you remember the contemplation emptiness you did before, right? So that means that you already before entering into Mahamudra, you have to have already incredible good understanding of emptiness. Otherwise you cannot remember it, right? Because Mahamudra itself is a non-analytical mind. It's a kind of placement meditation, right? Upon emptiness. So if you haven't analyzed emptiness before, how will you remember that at a time of generating subtle mind of Mahamudra? You know, so that's why emptiness, to study it, examine it, is extremely important. Is it? Yeah, I cannot say much more than that. Maybe another time. Follow Marco's example. Yeah. 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 Cesar, that's it?
There's still a few more if you can take them. I think there's 3 more questions.
Okay then.
Is that okay?
Yeah. Is okay?
It is.
Yeah.
Well, the next question's from B. If she can ask it.
Answer will be quick.
Quick fire. It's showing that she doesn't have a mic, so I'm.
Okay. Oh, there's one more, I see.
Hello, I'm here.
Okay. Yeah, all right, there you are. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry, I have a full computer on.
Okay.
Actually, my questions kind of relate with Martin's questions and the whole teaching you just, the whole explanation you just gave about Mahamudra and all that.
Yeah.
And that's not what I'm asking. My confusion has been the term non-duality of subject and object.
Yeah.
And whenever people, especially whenever people talk about emptiness, that kind of just roll off their tongue. And I'm always wondering, how does me and the flower become non-dual? I can understand that me and the flowers have the same ultimate nature in terms of our emptiness. We can be like one case. But conventionally, how can I and the flower become non-dual? So that's my question.
Yeah. So you and the flower doesn't become non-dual, but the emptiness of the flower and the flower itself is non-dual, right? Or the table and the place the table is occupying is on the same nature, right? Or not?
Yes.
So that means that the emptiness of the table and the impermanent nature of the table, there's a quality of the table, right? So they're in the same nature, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's a kind of non-dual aspect. There's many aspects of non-duality. That's one. Another aspect of non-duality is if you have direct perception of emptiness on the part of seeing, then the mind's realizing emptiness and emptiness itself, because the mind is more subtle, also becomes non-dual. Right?
Well, in that specific example, the mind and the emptiness, they are meditating, become non-dual, but but that would be the emptiness of its own mind, right? Not just emptiness of any phenomena.
Yeah.
Because if a mind,
so I have to be more precise. The non-duality is in this context, is meaning one nature in the context of the appearance and the mind, right? Because the object emptiness that appears and the mind itself are two different things, right? So that means the emptiness of the table and emptiness of self are the emptiness of the table and the table itself are two different things, right? Or the table and the space it occupies are two different things, but they belong to one nature, right?
Okay.
Yeah, so that maybe sometimes people refer to non-duality or same nature, but you have to be very clear with the terms. Yeah, non-dual doesn't mean the table and the space it occupies become one, right? They are the same nature, but they don't become one. You see that?
So specifically, when they talk about non-duality of subject and object,
then you talk about then you talk about, if you really talk about that, you talk about extremely subtle minds. Or in the sutra system, if you have studied awareness and knowers, there's one subject where they say self-knowers. You familiar with that or not?
No.
Oh, sorry. Because that self-knower with knows, with the consciousness, eye consciousness seeing the screen, and there's a consciousness perceiving that eye consciousness seeing the screen, they in non-duality or one nature. Anyway, that's a sutra level. But then the subject and object be non-dual in the Mahamudra and clear-light minds, meaning this mind is so subtle that what appears to the mind and the mind itself become of one taste. You know? Anyway, that's...
So appearance be anything.
Say again?
So that appearance through the very subtle mind can be anything. And
at that time, we talk about emptiness, right? Because all the object has to be very subtle. So emptiness is a very subtle object.
Okay, would this be emptiness of any phenomena or the emptiness of the mind itself?
It can be. In this case, the mind itself and that subtle mind.
So if this very subtle mind is looking at the emptiness of, say, like the flower, can we talk about those two, subject and object, being non-dual?
Can, yeah.
So a very subtle mind looking at the emptiness of the flower, so those two objects can be non-dual.
Yeah, so that means that the emptiness of a flower that appears to a subtle mind, also by direct perception, if you have a direct perception of the emptiness of the flower, right, then the emptiness of the flower and the mind realizing are of the same nature. You see? But the flower doesn't appear. That you have to understand. The flower doesn't appear. But the flower is a very coarse phenomenon. The emptiness of the flower appears to the mind, which directly perceives the emptiness of the flower. And that's in a non-duality. With conceptual, yeah, because with conceptual consciousness, there's always a mental image that appears. And there's the mind. There's always this duality is present. So with a direct perception, you have to have very clear understanding of what is conceptual consciousness and what is direct perception. Because in the conceptual consciousness, I sit here, I think about screen, this, that, it's all mental images. There's an incredible coarse form of communication between the mind and what appears. There's always this dualistic appearance. So if you have a direct perception, then there's a possibility, if the object is subtle enough, like one mind realizing another mind, or a direct perception of emptiness of the flower or emptiness of the table, you know, because the emptiness being very subtle, the object, right? And the mind being subtle, the subject, and then only you can talk about non-duality. Yeah, we have to study a little bit more about awarenesses and knowers, you know, then things become more clear. What are the divisions of mind? Okay?
Oh, knower. I didn't catch the word you were saying, knower.
Yeah.
Okay, so, yeah. Okay. Just now, Geshe, you mentioned, as you were talking, you mentioned like the very subtle mind looking at a very subtle object, emptiness, and their nature is non-dual. So you are talking about their nature being non-dual.
Yeah.
You are not talking about the two phenomenon being non-dual.
Yeah. So
are you talking about
the two phenomena that what appears, right? Emptiness, that is an object that appears to the subtle mind, which is a subject, they are non-dual. One nature, non-dual. Yeah.
Okay, the two phenomena being non-dual, not just their nature being non-dual.
Yeah, yeah. So in that case, they are non-dual. There's no duality. Because the appearance is without duality. So with conceptual consciousness or direct perception with our eye, we see things. You can see there's a duality, right, of object and the consciousness perceiving. Yeah. So if the object becomes subtler and subtler, and there's a direct perception with mental consciousness, realizing emptiness, then the object emptiness is extremely subtle, the mind is subtle, and then there's a possibility of this non-duality. You see that?
Okay. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Geshe.
Yeah, welcome. And there was one more? Or not?
The next question that was asked was actually put in the chat by William.
Okay.
I'm going to ask it for him. He asks, is meditation on the I usually done with a strong gross sense of I, e.g. when we're criticized, or is it also valuable to search into a more general sense of I, e.g. who is sitting, who is meditating, who is walking?
Yeah, the first one.
Perfect. And then the last questions from
just to summarize it, because the I that concretely appears, that has to be refuted because that doesn't exist. The conventional I exists, and that we don't refute. Comprende? Yeah.
And the very last question from Alicia.
Yeah.
Okay, so after all of these really serious questions,
yeah,
I kind of forgot my own, but I'll try my best. Yeah. So in my mind, I'm thinking about emptiness.
Yeah.
Okay. So then 3 points. So when I think of emptiness, this is my strategy.
Yeah.
So 3 points.
Yeah.
Lama Zopa Rinpoche.
Yeah.
Whenever he eats, for example, he makes offerings to all the Buddhas and all the Bodhisattvas and all the Aryas and like the whole world.
Yeah.
You have to listen to me with a sense of humor.
Yeah, I know how he prays. Yeah. Yeah.
Story, I'll speak really quickly. Yeah. So the story, he was in an airplane and he had like a few other people, like he was traveling alone. Yeah. And the stewardess came, gave the food.
Yeah.
And then he started his offering.
You know. It takes time. Yeah.
And then they were approaching wherever, and they started to go down the airplane, landing.
So they took away the food without eating.
Took away the food, and the stewardess took away the food, and then the two other people, or however many, said, "Oh, we didn't eat.
Yeah.
Are you hungry?"
They said.
He said, "Yes, that's right. It's okay. I got the essence.
I got a benefit." Yeah.
Oh, I heard it. I got the essence.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So that's where my thinking. Okay.
Yeah.
Then number 2.
Yeah.
When you go into renunciation, when you do renunciation,
when you generate that mind, right? Yeah.
Don't just jump into it.
Yeah.
A bunch of things that you have to do, like 100,000 prostrations, or like there are like a whole bunch of those 100,000 things that you have to do.
Yeah.
Then point number 3. Oh yeah, point number 3. Tupten, T-U-P-T-E-N. He's the translator for His Holiness. Tupten. Do you know who I'm talking about? Yeah, him. Okay. On YouTube, he wrote that big book. Do you know Lojong book?
Okay, Lojong, yeah. Collection of mind training, yeah.
Right. And so he was giving like a mini class, interactive. And he said 2 things. First thing, he said, since he became a layperson, he finds Buddhism very helpful.
He found?
He finds Buddhism.
Okay, yeah, very helpful, yeah.
Then number 2, he said, most people don't have a realization of self.
Yeah.
So in your teaching today, you said that, there are stages, when you're coming to emptiness, and you have to start developing a very strong sense of self.
Yeah.
Then finally, I don't know if you know of this person, I think he's dead. He's probably dead because he was old like before, but his name is Joseph Campbell.
Okay.
Well, anyway, he said, you were talking about people with mental afflictions. They really cannot understand emptiness.
Yeah.
And Campbell said the same thing.
Yeah.
When you're centered, you're one with bliss. So I think he was talking about enlightenment.
Yes.
However, the further off center you go, the closer to mental states, schizophrenia, etc., etc. So when I put all of these things together like a sandwich,
I
think
you offer to all the Buddhas, like Lamzo Rinpoche, that would be good. Yeah.
I think it's just like you say, habituation.
Yeah, exactly.
And so now you're doing these merit-forming things. You're doing the 1,000 prostrations.
Yeah.
Doing the renunciation exercises, for example. I'm not sure if that's what they're called, but it seems, or you're making all of these offerings. Yeah. Basically, through these very simple acts, you're training your mind to fall into emptiness.
Yeah.
Does that make
sense? You prepare the right conditions to come about. Yeah.
Okay, that's all.
Yeah. Yeah, so that means that, Rinpoche makes offerings to accumulate merit, right? And then doing all the prostrations and things, you purify negative deeds and accumulate merit in order to realize emptiness, right? As Tutum Jimpa said, even for a layperson, it's beneficial. Right? That's the summary. No? Okay, great. Thank you very much, everybody. Sorry, I got a bit late, almost 1 hour over time, but what to do sometimes. Yeah, last evening. So see you again. If you want more emptiness, like Saturday we do something, the Vajrakata Sutra. So it's more things to explore. And then I fall asleep for some time. Yeah, I do some retreats for, if you're interested, in Matre Institute, Netherlands, they have something, and then Uzling in Spain. But yeah, otherwise, yeah, after that I fall asleep for a few weeks. And then see you, yeah, maybe on the other side in September or something like that. All right. Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much. And then, yeah, maybe do a few dedications before we, you know, close off. So, yeah, we can do just quicker. I mean, we can do very long, but yeah, it can also be quick. Well, Slamis Operimche sometimes said you can do very quick, with offerings as well. So, yeah. Oma Hum, and then he said, Sanginama Chubabu, once I was a Rinpoche. He said, Oma Hum, Sanginama Chubabu, and then we started eating. Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, anyway, so this is, yeah, joking around, but yeah. So, yeah, just recite for the long and healthy life of His Holiness Dalai Lama, right? Yeah. Karerawe Gorwe Singanso, Benda Dewa Malu Chungwe, Chenre Zigwan Tenzingyanso, Jabe Jite Badu Tengyo Chi, and for the teachings 2 floors in all directions, yeah. Dage Jin Saba Gewa, Nintendo on the Wagon, Geva Jason Lozan Raba, Tembe Nimbo Rindu Sel, long life of Rinpoche. Yeah. Tu Den San Xin Zhang Yun Yao. Ten Xing Yong Pewe Gun Zun Do Bo Zi Jo Sun Gor Be Leng Men Zhun Zhu Ba Da So Du Ju Gong De Sha Den Shu. Then, yeah, 3 principal aspects of the parts, and oneself sentient beings generate them, and may they always increase and never degenerate. Nijong Sangpa Rinpoche, Magye Pana Gigyu Chik, Gema Nyamba Meva Yang, Gone Gonde Bewa Sho, Chanjo Senjo Rinpoche, Magye Pana Gigyu Chik, Geba Nyamba Meva Yang, Gone Gonde Bewa Sho, Toni Tawa Rinpoche, Magye Pana Gigyu Chik, Geba Nyamba Meva Yang, Gone Gonde Bewa Sho. And then, as I said before, if you dedicate and you think oneself making dedication, the dedication itself, and where we dedicate towards 2 is empty of inner existence, that helps also to seal the dedication and that things come about. Yeah. So pray for all future lives in that part of Precious Guru and quickly progress from stage of grounds and paths. Chief state of Ajidara. Gewa Gunda Yanda Lama Deme Jugi Pilda. Saran Lamgi Yanda Razan Doje Changi Kobanyo Toshi. All right, thank you very much. Hardcore people staying all the way 1 hour after time. It's impressive. Wednesday evening. So thank you very much. And then, yeah, see you again. Maybe in reality or maybe on the Zoom. Yeah. All right. Thank you very much. And yeah, next time. Bye. Ciao.